worlds to share. Joystick tales and button cues. Welcome to Gaming Views. Level up, we're on the go. Power ups in the audio flow. From the retro to the new reviews. It's a life of games with Gaming Views.
Hello and welcome to what is now episode 4 of Gaming Views. Episode 4 with me, Dan, and...
Also me, Dan.
It's just weird. It's just so weird. But I have to say, every time, that intro just gets me in the mood.
We're recording this on the night of the Euro Song Contest, and I can see it being performed there.
That's a blinding idea. Do you reckon next year's entrance for the UK? Quite possibly.
Dan, and also possibly. Me, Dan, performing Gaming Views.
Dan and Dan, probably not in the UK where the final will be hosted, I suspect. Nil point.
There's always that one time, right? There's always that hope.
Yeah, my kids are listening to it downstairs, and me being up here, not listening to it, doing something much more fun with you. Good. Okay, look, before we get started, we've got some quite exciting news, right, Dan?
I think it's extremely exciting, yeah. Well, this is officially our first proper episode under the Gaming Views feed. So the first 3 episodes came out under my other pod, Casting Views, and we are now officially a single or its own entity. Gaming Views is a thing.
We're a thing. I like being officially a thing. It's like being a couple.
Well, I like to think of it as we've come out of early access and are now in full, in the full marketplace.
Officially version 1.0.
Yeah. So I was going to say, compared to the fact that we've said, we're knocking on a bit, I was going to say we're still quite young, fresh in this journey.
Mentally. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Dan and I have had a chat, and I think we're kind of going to try initially to do 4 types of episode a month. So you're going to have this one, the talking point. We're going to do a deep dive. Now that could then be on hardware, publishers, developers, anything really, isn't it?
A deep dive, anything where we can go in depth and give a bit more detail than you and I either celebrating or moaning about something.
Yeah, it really is one too. And yeah, maybe focused episode would have been a better title, but no, we're deep diving. We're going to have a 3rd episode of a gaming news roundup, and then the last episode will be a gaming retrospective. So this will be where you and I will choose a game from our past or present.
And there are so many. I mean, particularly from our past, but
yeah.
Do you know what I was just before we joined? I was scrolling, plumbing the depths of my achievements list just on the Xbox, and bearing in mind I play, multilaterally across many different platforms, and it's so extensive. And it only goes back to the 360. I was scrolling forever. What was most disappointing is how few I'd actually got any achievements on.
Well, do you know that's a really handy thing, that app, especially the app on the phone. Is I like to replay games. I tend to play my favourite games quite often, and I think I said to you, I definitely said to some people at work that when Oblivion was on the 360 a few years ago, I played it to mop up all the achievements, and the difference in date between the last achievement I'd got on my previous playthrough and the current one at the time was 8 years, I think. So it's great to track that time.
It's incredible, isn't it? It's just I think the first game that popped up as an achievement, and I remember it quite fondly because I was flat sharing with someone at the time, and we used to play it a lot. Was PGA Tour 2007 Tiger Woods. So that I think that was the very bottom one. Now, whether I don't know if they're chronological, but whether that was the very first one that it had recorded, it was that was and just looking at it goes, God, I remember you sit there. It was like a form of meditation, just playing Tiger Woods golf on the 360.
And I still like. Well, we're going to do an episode on achievements and trophies, aren't we? But I don't necessarily head out for specific trophies, but I do like, on the Xbox you get that rare trophy where if it's under 10%. I'll be honest, I do love the sound that makes when that pops up.
I think you just need to play games straight away as soon as they come
Yeah.
out, and then
Yeah.
every achievement makes that noise.
I'm good. I'm that good. But the thing I'm annoyed with is and this is a really silly, petty complaint, but I've on my TV, which I've got another funny thing to say, is sometimes the games can be quite quiet, the audio. So I
Okay.
put the subtitles on, but often when the achievements pop up, it covers the subtitles.
What was I playing recently? Just the last few days. Revenge of the Savage Planet. So
Mhm.
all of the information for unless you're kind of, there's a pop up on the top left hand side of the screen that comes up quite often around your log, but then like story plots and things that all come up exactly where the achievements pop up, and the achievements pop up quite frequently. So there was quite often I missed a vital piece of story. It's not that vital. If you played the game, you'll know.
Yeah.
But it was like I don't know what it just said, because literally I've just sprung an achievement, so I don't know what happened. I genuinely don't know what's happened.
Yeah. But I had a soundbar for 10 years. I had it at my last house. Well, that's probably not 10 years, probably just slightly less than that, which I used at my last house. And when we moved, and I've been at my current place now for coming up to 5 years, been in front of the TV, but I've never plugged it in. Now, because I've just got this week.
I'm glad you didn't do that with your Xbox.
Yeah, we wouldn't be on episode 4 of this. Got my broadband upgraded this week.
Woo.
Yeah, now you don't see me pixely. You can actually see me properly now.
See you properly.
It gave us a chance to sort out the cables at the back, and I actually found the cable to attach it, and now I've got the soundbar back. So
I genuinely don't know what happens with cables. Like I've got a hideous setup. I've got an amp and lots of speaker wire and everything. But I distinctly remember when I put that thing together and plugged everything in, it was all neat. I didn't have like cable ties and things, but it was all very neat. And then I pulled it out to get something or to plug something in the other day, and it's just turned into this demon's nest of wires that are all wrapped in. And who comes in and does that at night? Just jumbles them all together. I don't know. Drives me insane. We can do one on that then, on the console setup.
Yeah. But also, one other thing that happened this week, I found, and I've been a member of Amazon Prime for a few years, I've only just really got tuned into the fact that they give free games away.
I know you nudged me on this the other day, and I'd totally forgotten as well. I'm game on the PC quite frequently, so I was like, oh Christ, yeah, of course there are.
Yeah, they gave a few. I redeemed them to start. I mean, I don't think my laptop will run it, but that's a different problem. But I downloaded a few games from, was it GOG? Good Old Games, isn't it?
Yeah.
.com. So yeah, I'm going to be downloading loads of games I'm not going to play. But you know,
we'll have you on a proper gaming rig before Christmas. You watch.
Yeah.
I'll be sitting at my PC playing with you, not just downstairs booting the wife out in the living room of a Friday evening so we can go online.
Maybe that could be a YouTube series. Dan builds a PC.
I would watch that because it would be hilarious.
But anyway,
I don't often hear you swear, but
moving on. But yeah, so that's it. We are officially Gaming Views now. So yeah, if you're listening to this, you've already found us, but make sure you press the little subscribe button or the follow and share it and tell everyone you know about it, because I think we're pretty good.
Yeah, get your weekly dose of gaming and go off at weird tangents at the same time, from cables behind TVs to Dan's attempt to build a PC. Good. All right, Dan. Look, let's crack on. What have you been playing?
I've had a fairly busy week, so it's pretty much more of the same. I did start. Well, I stopped Expedition 33. I've kind of taken a break from that because I've been focusing again on BioShock, trying to complete that run through.
Yeah.
And I had a dodgy save on it, so I had to restart it, which wasn't great.
Not ideal.
No, that and a bit more of that Despelote.
Oh yeah, is it a long game? Is it? How are you finding it? Because I think that last time we spoke, you were looking forward to playing it, and I know you and I have caught up since, but we haven't spoken specifically about the game itself.
It's an odd game. I've read it's not long, but again, I think I've broken it, so I'll come on to that in a second.
This is why you're not building a PC, Dan.
No, but sort of things happen around you, and again, it's kind of all in Spanish, but you know, you're playing as this kid initially, and all these quite serious news events are being told through the TV and conversations. And there was one section, I don't know if that was the aim of it, but you're at a party and I was just going around drinking everybody's beers and wines, and then you end up getting drunk.
Nice. I remember those days.
The reason I say I broke it, there was this bit, I was going into this park, and I don't know if you've seen the screenshots, it's all this weird kind of cartoony, scanned graphics. Everything turned almost realistic, and then I just kept falling through the map and landing on the pitch and then falling through the map.
You did an Assassin's Creed.
So I broke it, yeah. So, how about you?
So yeah, I've had a bit of a week actually, gaming wise. I think it's probably fair to say, we've always talked about being time poor, and I've got 2 young kids and a full time job, but I am an early riser, so not specifically in the week, but certainly at weekends I tend to be up about the same time as I would in the week, so probably about 6ish in the morning. Everyone's asleep, so I managed to kind of get certainly Saturdays and Sundays a bit of gaming in. So, and then sometimes in the evening. So I've actually crammed a bit in. So, just after the last pod, Dredge came out on Game Pass, and I think I spent about 3 days playing it and finished it. And absolutely loved it. Yeah, an Eldritch horror fishing game is not one I had on my watch list, but I really thoroughly enjoyed it to the point where I then bought the DLC, and I'm about, I don't know, a third of the way through that. So that was one, and then I think I mentioned Revenge of the Savage Planet came out, so I'm probably about 8 or 9 hours into that and enjoying it to a point. It's a little bit frustrating, so it's a Metroidvania, and I guess in some respects, and while most of the advancing tools aren't locked behind frustrating challenges, the rest of the level power-ups are, like multi-jump and a better weapon and things like that. And there's one particular one which is I think is actually bugged unless I'm really that bad. Which is basically a parry, and the challenge is to parry back at 3 different animals and kill them. And I just can't do it. I just cannot get. It's the one thing I can't do, so I can't level up any more of my gear. So, but still plugging on with it. And then last night downloaded the one I have desperately been waiting for, which was Doom Dark Ages.
Oh yes.
And I have to say, it's just so good. It
Really?
just scratches that itch of repetitive gibbing. And, it's just got such a lovely, I mean, you can tell they've spent the time and attention to detail on the loop of ammo, health, armor, and how they play between the different weapon types and the shield play. It's just a wonderful, wonderful game to play from my perspective. I'm just really enjoying it. I think there's like 22 chapters and I'm at like number 12 or something, so I properly and they're not massively long.
Yeah.
And 2 of my fears, there are kind of 2, I don't think these are massive spoilers, but there are 2 additional types of gameplay other than the running around like a human tank killing things, which is like a giant mech thing and a dragon thing. And I was a bit concerned that they were going to be jarring. But actually they've slotted them in really well, and they're just fun. They're just a sideline bit of fun and silliness. And I think that's the word for it, right? It's all heavy metal, and the story is just laughable, but it's fun, right? So yeah, I've really enjoyed cracking on with that today, and we'll definitely go back and finish playing that story mode, and then go back and try and, I think, 100% it, because there's lots of secret rooms and levels and things you can open up. So yeah, really, really enjoyed that. So before we get on to today's topic, I think we're going to hear a little something from the guys over at Game Club Podcast.
Hi, guys.
Welcome to my friendly Game Club, where everyone is welcome. The podcast where we share, we play, we run and sing. No, we don't run, but we do sing.
Hey kids, are you looking for a new favourite fortnightly video game review podcast?
Then boy howdy have we got the show for you.
We take a different game every 2 weeks and we review them just like a book club.
You can find us on all good podcasting platforms.
And some of the sketchy ones too.
Simply search for the Game Club Podcast and join the club today.
There we go. Good on you, boys. Right. So today we're doing, and I'm not sure how much justice we're going to be able to do this because it's such an unwieldy topic in an hour. Role-playing games. So one of the mainstays of kind of any recent, actually not even recent, right? Think back to text-based. Like one of the staples of any gamer's diet is going to be an RPG in some way, shape, or form. And I think they've had such an influence over every single gaming genre now that it's anything you pick up seems to be classed as some sort of RPG or melding into that kind of world. So look, I just wanted to quickly just kind of give some context. I don't think there's anyone out there who doesn't know what an RPG is. It's not a rocket propelled grenade. It's a role playing game. So
I better address my notes then. Sorry.
Yeah, Dan's quickly rubbing out bazooka and grenade launcher. Right, so I'll just give a bit of context. So an RPG, and thanks to our friends over at AI, has given me a nice definition, quite succinct. Console and PC gaming, a genre categorized by players assuming the role of characters in a fictional setting. Games typically feature rich storytelling, character development systems, and decision-making that affects gameplay, progression, and outcome. Core elements include character development, narrative focus, player choice, combat systems, inventory systems, and quest structures. I think that pretty much covers an RPG. So Dan, RPGs.
Yeah, when you chose this, and yeah, you're right. We're not going to do it too much justice, but hey, handy, we've got an episode called Deep Dives that we're going to do each month.
This is true.
I love RPGs. Truth be told, I think those are the games. If I only had to choose a type of game to play forever, it would be RPGs. I think you're right. There's whatever form. I mean, I even think the old like pick your own adventure book kind of things. It kind of gave me that vibe,
Yeah.
right? And I know point and clicks aren't technically RPGs, but again, as a kid playing them, they were the games that you put yourself into, because they were you could interact with various objects on a screen. It wasn't just that narrative or that linear adventure you were playing, and you could look at things and pick things up, even stuff that weren't related to what you had to do.
The puzzle mechanic elements, the kind of
Yeah,
having an adventure
yeah.
full of weird random stuff that you could stick together. Kind of is it the kind of LucasArts and the Monkey Island,
Yeah.
Guybrush Threepwood and all that kind
Threepwood,
of stuff
yeah.
for the Chuck. Yeah.
And while they've done away with this cliche, they used to really favour the memory loss hero. So you start the
Yes.
game, you don't know who you are, and you'll find it. So that at the time that
That's me
helped,
every
right?
morning.
Yeah.
It's helped me in later life.
Yeah, so I love RPGs and also the different types of RPGs, which I know, you've mentioned on here you don't like the turn-based combat games, or you didn't. And the JRPGs were obviously huge on that. So yeah, RPGs just been with me pretty much through my whole gaming time, really.
Yeah, and I think you're right. That there are you can kind of break them down into quite a number of subcategories, and I think with, like I said, with the expansion and creep of RPG elements into almost every genre.
Yeah.
Even like the kids kind of games. Some of the stuff they play on the Nintendo Switch and things like that. There's almost an RPG element. And when I was doing a bit of research, they were saying, "Well, Pokemon's an RPG," and I'm like, "I'm sure that's a trading card game." But apparently now it's an RPG because it has quests, because it has character building and stats. It's now falls under that umbrella. But you're right, there's that JRPG thing. They're very much turn-based combat, and you're right, I wasn't a massive fan. I didn't mention it earlier, but I did play a bit of Expedition 33 as I promised you I would, and you're right, I did really enjoy it.
Yeah.
But I think it had something a bit special, and I think we should do a deep dive on that one at some point as well. Then you've got go on, sorry.
No, I was going to say on what you said though, you're right. There's a couple of things I was going to say. One was around the RPGification of things.
I like that term.
When we both worked at that retailer a number of years ago, there was a colleague of ours, and I remember saying to him, and I can't remember why it was, but I said to him, everything's going to be an RPG soon. And he laughed at me. And then, even FIFA then started doing the be your own player, and you got skill trees in that. And, not Borderlands as such, but a lot of shooters are getting the RPG elements, and you're seeing that creep into everything. The question I've got for you though is, are RPGs now, or a lot of them, are they actually RPGs? Because the whole thing is about, the key is on role, right? Role playing games. And
Mm.
I wonder if back in the day there was more focus on being a particular role, and now in a lot of them you can kind of just do whatever you want, be a broad sheet in that game, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, but isn't that the very definition of what D&D was trying to achieve, which was do whatever you like? I know what you're saying, but so you can kind of look at it two ways, right? You can kind of go, it's not really in the spirit of Dungeons and Dragons, right? It's not trying to achieve something through the random number gods and getting the things that like Baldur's Gate has done so well. But it has taken that idea of, but I can do anything and create it in a way I want to create it, or have it play out in a way I want it to play out. So it's that, I don't know. I think the aspiration's there. I don't know. I like some of the purer elements of like that. The whole Doom thing I was talking about today is like, it's just running around shooting stuff. I mean, yeah, there's a little bit of leveling up. I wouldn't call it a skill tree. You're not expanding things. You're not having robust conversations with innkeepers around their missing daughter or things like that.
Yeah.
You're literally
Yeah.
punching demons in the head. So I think I like that separation, diversion. But don't get me wrong, I'm like you. If I could have one genre I think I'd play for the rest of my life, it would probably be RPGs, just purely because of the volume of content that they have as well, and the broad spectrum that they cover, because they do cover everything now, from fantasy settings through to sci-fi through to real world. There's such a blend and difference across all of them that you could just put them in a hat and pick one out and you probably end up enjoying it.
Well, that's it. Look at back in the day, they were ye oldie adventure, fantasy world. But now you've got cyberpunk recently.
Yeah.
Now, even many years ago, you had, I think, Syndicate on the computer. That was kind of like a corporate
Syndicate,
cyberpunk-y. Yeah.
Shadowrun,
Yeah.
which is all set in and all of these things. I mean the ones we've talked about are probably quite cyberpunk, all quite cyberpunk, but they're all great examples of where people have taken a specific, whether it's steampunk, cyberpunk, any sort of punk, but turned it into a game for the masses that people can enjoy because of that rich storytelling elements and things like that. I mean, I guess I mainly favoured more Western RPGs or action RPGs. I quite like the Diablos of this world and things like that. I mean, it's more of a looter shooter, isn't it? I guess Diablo these days, but it's still got those elements. I mean, I'm really rubbish at end game stuff. That's my problem. I'll play the story, what there is of one, and then I'm a bit crappy at the end game content where you have to overpower up, and then try and defeat wave after wave of everything.
See, I'm going to be, my memory's gone. I was just trying to look. I very much more sort of like if we're going to use those terms, like the Western RPG, but on the Xbox 360, I loved, and on the PlayStation, I loved all the JRPG. So I think the first one, I'm trying to remember which game I played first. It's either going to be Knights of the Old Republic, or the first one I had on the PlayStation was Final Fantasy VIII, and the opening cinematic of that blew me away. And there were so many great games, because I think the 360 was courting like the Japanese developers. I think they were doing well.
They were
at the
certainly
time, weren't
trying to, like Square Enix's and this world and things like that, because I think they, up until that point, they'd been almost exclusively kind of Sony orientated. I guess because Japanese-based company, very simple to get into that ecosystem. I did used to play a bit of Final Fantasy games. I missed the whole furore around Final Fantasy VII when it came out, and I know that was kind of the biggie that everyone cites, and I know they've remastered it recently, and I did try and get into it, but because of my aversion or allergy to JRPGs, I fundamentally failed. But one I do remember back in the day, and I think I mentioned this to you probably on one of the walks or something. There was one on the original PlayStation that I do remember playing and actually really enjoying, called Vagrant Story, and that was a Square Enix game. And I think it had a very odd combat system. I can't comment. It was like there was like a parry and block system or something similar that you had to, and it was almost a rhythmic timing game type thing. But it was, I mean, I'd have to look it up and have or anyone else can. But it had crafting. And it was, I really enjoyed that. Weirdly, for a
Yeah.
JRPG.
Found the one. Sorry, I've literally just found it now. It's called, the one that really stuck with me is called Lost Odyssey. And the reason it stuck with me is because the story, and if I remember right, I think it was a guy who ultimately was immortal, and he was going basically settling in an area, but then would see everyone around him die because he was immortal. And it's the kind of the stories and the melancholiness of that. And yeah, for me, I think what the I think at the time what the JRPGs had really well was like that story, that really strong storyline running through it. Whereas then you would
Was it?
play something like an Oblivion, and it was much more open. You find your story in those sort of games, don't you?
I think that's my favourite time though. You know, because I'm the guy, and I think we've spoken about this before. I'm the guy who, when you walk out into an open world, be it Elden Ring or Oblivion or wherever it is, I go the opposite direction to the
Yeah,
marker,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I inexorably wander into a bunch of high level something or others that just kill me if it's not a scaling game. But yeah, I'm that dude, because why wouldn't I? Why would you? I don't want to follow a quest marker. I want to complete all the side quests before I do the main quest, which sometimes doesn't work in your favour, as you
Yeah.
demonstrate quite well with Oblivion.
Yes.
But do you think that expansion of RPGs into kind of every other game, do you think it's they've overworked some of those mechanics and kind of put them into games and kind of gone, because sometimes they do feel a bit shoehorned,
Mm.
and you wonder if I think back to kind of the Assassin's Creeds and things like that, who went from quite a pure parkour assassination gameplay to something like Odyssey, which was where they really start expanding out that RPG element to the point where they had maps that had specific gating on character, on enemy levels, and do you think have they introduced too much? Do you think there's a way to pare it back?
That's a really good question. That is a really good question. I've repeated that just to give myself a little bit of thinking time, just like that last sentence was.
Nice, I like it.
Yeah, I do. I know it's probably something you're going to talk about later. It just feels like for some games they've put it in just to increase the play length or the amount of time
Yeah.
people are staying on it. Do I think Assassin's Creed needed it? Not really. My favourite ones we said before were the Ezio. Now I know they did introduce some. Well, I don't think it was RPG bits in there. It was more like
No.
base building, etc., wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
And I think the later games, while I've enjoyed them, it's just made it too big, and it's kind of gone away from what it was, that tight adventure, narrative-driven focus. So yeah, in a long way round for a short word to say yes, I do.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things that get me about them, and does Assassin's Creed do it a little bit, I guess, but what it definitely does is the thing that rubs me is the whole. Do I need the 12th drop of that spear in a slightly different color and texture that does a slightly different DPS? It's that kind of thing, and then you've got this whole inventory full of tat that I'm really just going to junk or sell. I'm kind of like, because I guess when it comes to certain things, I'm quite a purist. Like you talked about the Ezio, and I think they were a great example of a really good, solid, and yes, they added little incremental little elements in, but they were really pure in that you kind of you needed to do something, and then so you had a quest to get this thing that then opened up a certain weapon that allowed you to then do the next thing, almost Metroidy, but not quite. And I like that progression of how that works, rather than running around a map grinding to level up to get a different shiny spear or sword that might do slightly more hit point damage to an enemy. It doesn't really thrill me. But the other thing I think that again that feels quite shoehorned occasionally, and I think you're going to say this, and you're going to tell me off for it, but I think one of the Mass Effect games did this quite poorly as
Oh,
well, right? Shoehorned in decision making, or made it seem like it was fundamentally super important. And I can't remember which Mass Effect game it was where you got to the end and you made a decision and you were just like, this is going to be really consequential. And it was like, oh no, it doesn't. It just
well,
falls flat on its face.
it's really funny you said this because I was actually going to bring up Mass Effect. Now, for those new listeners to this show, or even my
Shouldn't have said it.
other friends.
I'm regretting it already.
I love Mass Effect. It's one of my all-time favorites. But I'm sitting here and thinking it's described as an RPG. And yes, the thing is, there are you choose a class, and that class does have a bearing on how your skills are and play the game. It's also got the other key thing in an RPG, which is choice, right? Making decisions. And
Yep.
they are great, as you're going along, because the story is great. But for me, the first one, yes. The second game, and probably even the third, is more of almost like a cover-based shooter rather than an
Sure.
RPG. But it's an RPG because you are making decisions and you've got a class. Now you're not pumping points into those classes, etc. So yeah, at what level is a game an RPG, or when does a shooter become an RPG, or when does an RPG become a shooter? Because like I said, it's for me, I think the RPG bit is tenuous. I guess the one thing you do have in that game, and maybe this goes back to my point I was saying earlier, I love those games. So when I'm playing it, this will sound weird, I am Commander Shepard. I am playing it in his head almost. And I think that then to me is the most effective thing. And that's what I was saying. You are playing a character, whereas in Oblivion, I'm Mr. Swordman here, and then I'm shooting fireballs here, and then I'm being good here, and then I'm murdering people as part of the Dark Brotherhood, right? So
But did the Paragon element of Mass Effect, because it's so in your face as you go through that, whereas Oblivion's a bit more nuanced, I guess. It's not, you don't have a meter. Do you know what I mean? That tells you how good or bad. Did you think that persuaded you in any way, shape, or form in Mass Effect to be one way or the other? Have you ever played an evil run through of Mass Effect?
I've done it once.
Regretted it.
No, I did it because I wanted to see how things played out. Not overly differently, but I wanted to see how things played out. Yeah, I played to my code. I'm generally a good guy. I'm generally a good
guy.
person.
A good guy, yeah.
But
I'll agree with that.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it is a lot more in your face in that game. So much so that I think it's Mass Effect 2. The more renegade decisions you make, you start getting scars, and the scars start glowing red, right? And I mean, it's a bit.
That's quite cool. See, that for me, it was interesting. I was reading a documentary about, or watching a documentary about people who have disfigurements, and they were kind of saying, look, in every movie, video game, blah blah, the bad guys always have scars. They always have disfigurements. They always, and that gives people a certain perception of people who do have a disability or disfigurement. And yet I am always the guy, when I do a character creation in an RPG or any other game, I always put a massive scar across my face. I don't know what, it's like, this is my battle scar, I wear it proudly type thing. So I don't know. Look, I take it back. I didn't mean to diss Mass Effect. I'm still the Garrus to your Shepherd. It's fine. I will don't I think some games, and maybe you're right, maybe it's not Mass Effect, because that was primarily built on choice, I think, from the ground up. But there are certain games that shoehorn in that choice, and it seems feels unnecessary. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, you're right. And like I said, I think even Mass Effect, I will, I know you're kind of joking, but I will criticize that game where it needs to be. And I think, like I said, it is the RPG elements feel quite light in terms of what we may traditionally think of RPG elements. But even that, it's funny, just as an aside, what always gets me is in the second game, there's a scene where you go into an apartment and there are looters, and you berate them and tell them to stop stealing off dead people. They go, if you get the decision thing right. Yeah. And then you just go around looting the apartment.
Looting. It's always my favourite part. Yeah. I think that's what Oblivion did well, was like, no, if you get seen in court, that's it, mate. Yeah. You either go to prison or pay a fine. But you're right. It's like, don't do this thing, but I'm just going to do it when you've gone.
I think what we're getting at here is some games have the trappings of an RPG, but some games really go into it. And it's often those games where the numbers are working in the background. Like, I've not played it yet. I think you have. And I know I talked to Joe at Game Club Pod, and one of their games of the year was Baldur's Gate 3. Now that,
Mm.
to all intents and purposes, that to me sounds like it is a proper RPG.
Oh, through and through. I think
Yeah.
it's as close as you could get to a tabletop recreation of D&D. And the thing for me, because it had been quite a while since I played Dungeons and Dragons, when I got into Baldur's Gate 3, it took me a while to click with that.
Mm.
I was playing it like a standard top-down strategy, I think, rather than I could probably do whatever I want and see what the outcome is, which is where the beauty of that game lies. And just yes, I did have a massive scar across my face and my character. But you raised a really interesting point that I guess we glossed over. One of the fundamental things about an RPG normally is a class, is that class selection. So I know I have one that I lean towards, and probably always have done the same thing. Is there a class you tend to lean towards when you
Always.
go on,
I tend
hit
to be like the barbarian. I'm the heavy hitter. I want to go in, and I'm not. That's probably the complete opposite to kind of like my temperament. But yeah, I go in, weapons flailing, arms flailing. Yeah, I'm taking everyone out.
You're the tank.
Yeah, basically.
down the tank. I love it.
I tend to go for that. Yeah.
I've always done the whole. Either if it exists, either it's a rogue with daggers always, and I think again that goes through to that was always what I was in D&D. I was always a rogue, normally a wood elf rogue, but it's either that or it's a kind of battle mage. So not the tanky kind of thing, but spellcast ability, but also kind of able to get stuck in if I need to. And they're the kind of two that I'll generally flex between, but normally a rogue. But yeah, I've always had that. But I thought that is a part of the beauty of traditional RPGs, I guess, is that class selection. You can choose to be something that it always staggers me how much more game design and thought has to go into the game design, because you've then got to equate for every eventuality of every type of class. So you're not just saying, well, here's a character, he does this, this, and this, and therefore I just need to code for this, this, and this. There's that times 5 or 6, or because everything's got a class these days, right? Championship shooters, extraction shooters. I mean, even the secret thing that you and I played last night it's not called a class, but it's a class, right? So everything these days has some class. So I think that it's just that RPG thing spilling into every kind of genre.
Yeah. And it's funny. I generally, like I said, I'm always the close combat. I don't like distance. And yeah, I haven't got patience for sneaky. But whilst it's not an RPG, the only time I ever broke that was Overwatch. I was one of the healing characters because I just had fun doing that. Yeah.
I never played a lot of Overwatch. I heard really good things about it. I think my oldest son played it and really enjoyed it. But yeah, not one I ended up getting to. Mainly because I'm not great at Twitch gaming and kind of I'm just too old for the reflexes. But okay, here's another one for you. So you talked about RPGs, and if you could play one for the rest of your life, or a genre, it would be RPGs. What if you could only choose one RPG or one developer of an RPG to play for the rest of your life? What would it be?
Right, because 3 jumped to mind, but you're saying 1, yeah?
You're only an It's not Desert Island Discs. Come on.
Right. Well, if I had 3 and then I'll whittle it down, so it's got to be Bethesda, Fallout, and I know they're the cliches, but Fallout and Elder Scrolls, right? Love them.
Yeah.
Also, obviously, you've got Square Enix for like the Final Fantasy games. But the one I think I would go for, and they're kind of making a comeback. Well, they're not gone away. Don't call it a comeback. Is Obsidian.
Yes.
I think it'd be Obsidian. And I was just trying to remind myself. So, Neverwinter Nights back in the day. We spoke about it the other day, and I said it, and as I said it earlier as well. One of the first I played and being blown away by it was like the Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. Now I know they definitely did the second one. I can't remember the first one, but I'm looking here, and then you've got like Fallout New Vegas. They did the Outworlds Avowed. They've got South Park Stick of Truth. You throw that
yeah.
in there.
Yeah,
And do you remember one called Alpha Protocol?
I do. The spy one.
Yeah, which
Yeah,
I
yeah.
remember it was a bit janky, but that's again Obsidian.
I think it became a bit of a cult because of that,
yes,
though.
yeah.
It was, yeah.
And then you couldn't get it. And that's the
Yeah.
thing. I'd love to play that again. Yeah, so I think I would go for Obsidian just because of the variety of settings and games they've done.
Yeah, it's a good choice. I played a lot of Avowed when it first came out, to kind of go back in, and I think what they did really well with that was they created a lovely open world-ish RPG, with all the fundamental elements of what makes a game great without overstuffing it with things. And all the mechanics to do them, the crafting and the upgrading was very slick and very simplified. That's a way of phrase it. But also it just felt right. It was one of those games that you played and you realise how overstuffed some other games have become with these unnecessary mechanics, and you're like, I don't need to worry about that, and I can just switch between these weapons, and I can just, So I really enjoyed Avowed, and I do keep meaning to go back to it. And actually, this week they've launched their roadmap for kind of upcoming additions to the game, so new weapons, spells, things like that. So I think once they release the first one in a few months, I think I'll go back to it and give it another go. Yeah, I'm kind of in the same place as you. I think I think the other one I'd throw in there, I think, because I think they really hit their stride with Witcher 3 was the guys at CD Projekt Red, who just, they seem to have, and anyone who, did the wrong thing, right, bowed to the pressure and released, Cyberpunk way too early. And I remember, playing that the day it was launched, and wondering why I was riding a bike but 20 foot off the seat and things like that, which was just, But anyone who does that and then has the guts to stick their hands up and go back and do everything in their power to create what is now essentially a fantastic game and a really polished game. And the DLC was phenomenal as well. I think they'd definitely be on my radar, because I'm really interested to see what they do with Witcher 4. Without using the Witcher as the main character, and having Ciri as kind of that, so it'd be really interesting to see what they do with that. But and the other thing being, they took a lot of the original, not content of the book, but certainly the some of the narrative of the book and some of the spirit of the book, and injected that into certainly the first 3 games. And it's almost like they, where do they go now? Because a lot of that they can't rely on anymore. So it'd be interesting to see what they do with that. And I think you have to credit a company that has a not everything is just a fetch quest, because that's another frustration of mine, with RPGs. It turns into go and get this and bring this here for this spell, or go and get here and bring this here for this recipe. It becomes a little bit frustrating, and I think they did a really good job of tailoring different quests for different things. So yeah, it was either those or the guys over at Bethesda, because Fallout, I mean, brilliant. Or Larian, right? I mean, and when you get to enjoy Baldur's Gate 3 and realize the freedom that it offers you, you kind of almost, it's there'll be this, they'll create something even better the next time. So
While you were talking as well, you reminded me of something else. So again, I'm going to mention Mass Effect, because I loved Mass Effect, but I said the first game, you might say, was a bit more RPG and had more in-depth mechanics than 2 and 3. Dragon Age, again, that was similar. Do you remember Dragon Age Origins? Did you ever play that?
Yes.
That felt more like an old schoolish type RPG. And then the remaining games became more action-y, didn't they? More sort of action adventure-y. And again, it was that whole shift away from, and this is what I'm saying, maybe we're watering down RPGs because we're throwing the mechanics into so many different things, or we're trying to make it more accessible to people, whereas in the past maybe it was seen as a niche genre.
I think you may be right, because think of Dragon Age Origins and all the way through, the focus became more about the combat and more about, I mean, even down to the latest one, right, was super combat focused. It was less about you know, because a lot of them now have this. We talked about class, but they have this freedom of class, right? You can blend any type to be whatever you want. You can be a tank who does spells. You can be, you know, so you can. There's no real specification on what you have to be in the what, you know. You don't have to keep your distance because you know, you got a glass cannon or whatever. You know, you can do anything and blend them up. But the focus very much became about the combat or the parry or the whatever it was, rather than what's the purity and essence of an RPG. You know, and a lot of them, you know, and maybe that is part of it, or maybe it's the scale of the things. I mean, they're just getting massive, right? I mean, they're the size that these things take, they're like 100 hours to complete, and it became almost a badge of honor.
Well, this is it. And if I get this wrong, address complaints to Dan H at Gaming Views podcast, please.
I've
But
already made mistakes.
no, but like Dragon Age, I remember Origins, you had the overworld map, and you know, you were exploring hubs, and you know, you would choose a section. And then I think I remember too, the thing I remember being disappointed about is almost like you were quick traveling everywhere. There was
Everywhere.
Yeah, you say I'm going to go off the screen here, and then all of a sudden you end up in a castle somewhere else or a
Yeah,
palace.
you were just popped into a
Yeah.
very specific area. Yeah, it 2 was poor.
Yeah.
I didn't like 2.
Yeah, but I think you're raising another good point there about the size of the games now, or how long they take to play. Yeah.
Yeah, they just, and it does make you wonder, how long can you know, as a developer, you're sitting there going, well, how long can I legitimately keep someone's attention span without a mechanic becoming boring or dull, right? And if you're building a game that's 100 hours of content for the main story, and then going, and it's another 60 odd for full completion, you know, how long am I keeping someone's attention on doing this thing, whatever it is, without it becoming a chore and boring and dull and repetitive? Because, you know, we've spoken about this a lot even on this podcast. The essence of gaming and what we love about it is fun. So if I'm playing a game and it's not fun, am I going to go back to it? You know, and I've said it before, I think Assassin's Creed Shadows, as much as it's a beautiful game and, you know, it's a fun murder simulator for a little while, it ultimately became a bit samey and boring. So I haven't even gone back to it. And I'd rather pick up a Eldritch fishing game, weirdly, you know. So,
and that's the point. So that's what, you know, I think you look at Oblivion, we've said you can do the main quest in about probably 6-10 hours, I think, couldn't you? So you can do that quickly. It's everything else around it that you have to find yourself. Now, like Mass Effect, bringing it back up again.
You got a problem, Dan. You see something about that.
I really do. I don't get bored with that. And the reason I'm bringing it up, like I have to justify it, is like those and some of the JRPGs I mentioned, like the Final Fantasies, or even, you know, that Infinite. No, yeah, the game I said I've already forgotten what what it was now.
Odyssey.
That's it. Thank you very much for remembering better than I. And even look at Expedition 33 recently. It's got that real focus on the story and characters, whereas Oblivion, again, and you know I love that, and I've said on here I love it, it can feel a bit, is it not empty is not the right word, soulless maybe?
I used to term it, I probably still do term it for people of a certain age, floaty light. That's how it comes across to me. And even now, you know, I went back to it and played it because I loved it and it was a great nostalgia hit. But after about 10 or 12 hours, I was like, it's not grabbing me. And yet, like I said to you, I think, you know, you're spot on. You said to me, you know, I really think you'll like Expedition 33. And I played about 6 hours of it, and yeah, I loved it. I mean, it's got a certain, as a French pun, je ne sais quoi, right? Because and I'm taking the mix slightly, but it is a very French game. It's got that Belle Epoque kind of, you know, everything about it. And weirdly, I don't know if you saw a video that popped up earlier in the week, originally set in steampunk London.
That's what I've heard. Yeah.
And you see the trailer, and it looks appalling, but it's a fascinating insight into how these things are, you know, begin. The inception of an idea with the parry thing, and then become and blossom into this. And I think more power to those guys, right? They had massive faith in themselves, that this vision of a very probably quite niche, very French approach to a world building and a story, and they have faith in their vision, and look where it paid off. I mean, that it's a great game. You know, I genuinely sat. I mean, I played quite a bit. It was on Game Pass, but I had it up on the PC, so I wasn't actually playing on the Xbox. But I sat there, and it was one of those things. I played it, and I was like, "Oh crap! I've been here 4 hours." It really kind of sucked me into that. The story and the acting's phenomenal, and I'm quite tempted. As much as I love Charlie Cox because he does the voice of the lead character, I'm quite tempted to kind of play it in French with the subtitles because
okay.
I'm one of
Yeah.
those guys who when I watch a Korean drama or a German drama or something like
Yeah.
that on, I always want to watch it in the original language with subtitles because I just cannot abide bad dubbing. But you wait till you see us two on YouTube. But so I'm almost tempted to kind of switch that on and go through it. But again, it's got all the. I don't even know if it's an RPG.
Well, this is it. If we're looking at the fact, you're not really picking a class, but each character is technically a class, right? You've got almost like your healer,
that's fair.
your magic person. You've got the skill system. You've got the pictos, which is like your passives, etc. So
Yeah.
I kind of look at it. As it is. It kind of reminds me of some of the older sort of like kind of like the Final Fantasy games in a sense. Yeah, likewise, some of the things I've said, you look at it, it's not a big world. It's, as in it's not massively open. You've got the overworld map, but you go to these smaller hub areas. It's turn-based, which I think helps make it feel like it's an RPG, but it's got a soul. And as much as I love like the Fallout games as well, sometimes they can feel a little lonely when you're wandering. And I know that's supposed to be, I think that's supposed to be the thing, but I guess this is where I'm saying some of the ones I've really enjoyed, like Mass Effect, and well, all the ones I've mentioned, there's, I think maybe the ones where it's focused on the story a little bit more, and there's a group of people, maybe I've enjoyed those more.
Yeah. We talked about the most recent Dragon Age, and I think, what was it, Veilguard? I think that the world felt populated and lived in, and I think that added a lot to the game. I know it sounds silly because you're just playing the game, but actually, having a realistic relationship or being able to talk to someone about something that's just happened, I think adds a lot of depth to what's happening. I think that's something that Clara Expedition 33 does really well. And you're right, I guess the class system does exist. It's just nuanced differently because they're set. You have control over all of them, but they're set in that kind of in that way. Yeah, I will go back and play some more of that. And I guess one of the key things about it, which I was reading about recently, and I know they've nerfed it, but you can cheese it, right? You basically build a character that does, 3 million points of damage.
Yeah, I've not built that yet. I see all these people doing that. I'm like, there I am, just chipping away.
So tempted.
Yeah.
It was like that the Elden Ring. I think when because that is an RPG, right? And I know we haven't and probably won't spend a lot of time talking about kind of From Software and stuff because I know neither of us are big fans of the get goods kind of genre of games. But I did desperately want to enjoy that because it was massively hyped, but also because it was supposedly more accessible. Ironically, the only way I actually found it more accessible, because I am not good at those sort of games, and I will happily put my hand up and say that, is I looked at a guy on YouTube who basically was advising how to slightly overpower to make earlier areas easier. It wasn't cheesing per se, but it was like, if you follow this route and do these things, you'll build just your character for the first couple of hours, and it did invariably make it easier. And I did start to enjoy it until I got to a place where I wasn't overpowered and then died instantly again. And I was just like, I just can't, and that I think frustrated me because I think what those guys do is create absolute horrific beauty in what they do. Like the Dark Souls, the Demon Souls, Bloodborne, they're all stunning games, man. Like whatever warped brain nightmare people come up with those character designs and things like that. And Sekiro, I played Sekiro for a while and enjoyed that for a little bit because it was a more aggressive style of play. But they are gorgeous games, and I want to enjoy it and live in those worlds because I think, particularly Elden Ring, but I'm just not good enough. I'm just rubbish.
Well, there you go. That'll be your YouTube series then. Getting
Watch
through.
Dan suck at From Software games.
Get through Dark
It'll be
Souls.
a very short series, I'll tell you that now. It'll just end up with me launching a controller at the camera.
We'd be demonetized quite quickly on now.
Absolutely. Right, so we talked about RPGs being big. Are they too big? Do you prefer? I enjoyed Avowed because it was a little bit smaller and tighter paced.
Yeah, I prefer that. But I think as long as it gives you the option. But yeah, I prefer now. I think we said time is precious now. I think I would prefer my focus game.
Yeah, I think just having it, a slightly tighter pace, slightly shorter. Don't get me wrong, I love something that spans out and goes on for a good 30, 40 hours. But I don't want it to feel unnecessary. I think that's the thing.
I think we used to equate 100 hours of gameplay with value for money.
Yeah,
I think that's probably where it came from. Right now, value for money is enjoying the game, and when I'm 80 hours into a game and I've probably only done 5% of the main quest or 5% of the content, because every time I look, it's like, oh, a quest marker, oh, a quest marker. I think you said it earlier, it stops becoming fun after a while.
Yeah, it does. It becomes overbearing. It becomes a job, and I don't want to play a game to do a job.
The biggest role-playing game of all.
Yeah. I mean, I'm living it. I don't want to go in and do it. Yeah. Okay, so look, you and I have been gaming for a very long time now. What are some of your earliest kind of RPGs that you played and remember?
I think it's the ones I mentioned. The ones that would really hit me would be Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 1 and 2. And even to this day, I think the first one has that twist. There's that kind of big reveal of a character.
Yeah.
That, and again, it would have to be Final Fantasy VIII specifically, because that was the first one I had on my PlayStation. And like I said, I would just watch the opening cinematic over and over again. Those ones really, really stick out for me. If I had to say the first one that I truly fell in love with, probably is going to be Oblivion. Completed it multiple times.
And 100% of it.
Yeah, 100% did it. Yeah, on the Xbox. I think it was on the PC, right? I'm sure I played it on the PC as well. But yeah, I think that was the first one where I thought literally you could go anywhere and do anything. So I think Knights of the Old Republic also was fairly story driven. Don't remember too much of it now. But Oblivion was the one like, yeah, you'd go wandering 50 yards in that direction, you find a cave and there's a random book you pick up that gives you a mission. Yeah.
Yeah. You see, I think my engagement, probably because of coming from a nerdy D&D background, I have fond memories of Dungeon Master on the Atari ST, which was a kind of dungeon crawler RPG with kind of real-time gameplay, real-time kind of action gameplay, fireball casting. I really, I struggle to picture it, and I might go and have a look at some sneaky videos after this because I fondly remember playing it and enjoying it a whole lot, like, getting absorbed into it without all of the choice mechanics and things like that. And you're right, Oblivion's fantastic, right? I mean, it's such a clever game and so well coded. And Todd Howard and those guys just, they know what they're doing, right? I mean, they've been doing it for long enough. But they're all nerdy geeks as well, so it doesn't surprise me. So I'd engaged with RPGs early days, and I think I said to you last week while we were on the walk, there was like one of the first examples of like a split screen or co-op gameplay in an RPG, which was Blood Witch, that I'd totally forgotten about, and all these things started coming back to me. Mentioned Vagrant Story earlier, but then, for me, some of the stuff on the Xbox was a bit more, I guess, irreverent, or maybe I love Knights of the Old Republic because I'm a huge, well, you see my office, I'm a Star Wars geek, right? Yeah. But Fable, forget the Peter Molyneux hype, but I loved the Fable series. I'm super excited about Playground Games bringing back the next iteration of it.
Yeah.
You know, with you know, just a fantastic cast as well. So you know, I really enjoyed Fable. Jade Empire, I really enjoyed as well because you
Yeah.
know I used to think I'd probably
Yeah.
be the next Bruce Lee at some point in my lifetime. So you know, loved kung fu and all that sort of stuff. And about the closest I got was literally you know kicking people in the face on a computer. But that was a great you know and a different thing. Do you know? Because I think up until that point everything had been
Different
fantasy
environment, isn't it? Yeah.
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 It just turned the whole thing on its head. I think you know made something of it. But I guess one of the other early ones I played, which I never considered it as that, but now people do. Was Zelda Ocarina of Time, which
Yeah.
again is kind of you know that progression based leveling up. You know, not necessarily RPG, but you know, it was an early example of Nintendo getting their head around you know how RPGs might evolve, I guess. And then they started doing Paper Mario and things like that, which is just weird.
I've got another. I remember I mentioned them briefly. The other two I want to shout out was Baldur's Gate, but the original one,
Yes.
and Neverwinter Nights as well. So like the original,
Yeah.
because they were very similar. But they were the ones I remember getting really hooked on that, and I think getting the DLCs or the expansion packs. It wasn't really DLC at the time. Remember, you got
Yeah.
expansion packs.
You did. Yeah.
Yeah, getting hooked on those. So those were another couple that really grabbed me, and I sunk a lot of time into.
Even before them, there were like the Ultima series. Do you remember that?
Yes,
The Ultima was like almost
yeah.
a precursor to all of those, which is and Bard's Tale. I think that's been reimagined or revamped or something. I think
had a new one, didn't it? A few years back, 4 was it? And
Mm.
now on Xbox at least, I'm sure on Game Pass you can get like the series as a set. Yeah.
Oh, I might have to go back and play. I'm not sure. I'm going to run out of time. Blimey, there's so many to consider, and I think there's so many. Are there any coming up that you've kind of gone? Oh, can't wait to play that.
The Outer Worlds 2. I know some people didn't really get on with the first one.
I like the first one.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah,
I like. And that was
space.
It also has one of my favorite bugs I've found in a game once. There was a mission where you had to do something. You had to come back, and this building had the mission marker. And I was going in, and there was no character there. I was going in and out, and it was definitely this marker.
Yeah.
In and out, load a save, turn the Xbox off, put it back on. Well, I realised, and I've got a video somewhere else, I'll send it to you. The character was pretty much 3/4 of the way in the ground. So when I looked to the floor, I just saw the top of the head pointing. So I just had to point the cursor at the top of the head.
With them?
Yeah, you could still interact. Because obviously you're not looking at the ground.
That's brilliant.
But yeah, I think I would say the Outer Worlds too, just because again it was that, you know, it's Obsidian, it's that type of RPG, and it had the humour. You know, it was trying to be a little bit different to the others.
Yeah, it was good, and hopefully the next one will have someone better with their XY axis, and so you're not talking to floors to try and get quests. I mean, that'd be an improvement. Yeah, I think other than kind of. Which, I mean, look, we've said that any game could be an RPG these days, right? So I could mention anything, and you know,
the next FIFA game. That's
the next FIFA. That's the RPG I'm looking forward to the most. Yeah, I think definitely The Witcher. The next Witcher is the one that's on my radar as a must play. And I guess what's the next Elder Scrolls? It's 6.
Oh yeah,
it's going to be. I mean, because you just know that's going to be good. I mean, Skyrim was good. I mean, Skyrim was just an evolution on Oblivion, but Pusa Ra, I mean, oh God, man, the designers, not just the designers, but the artists and the people these guys employ to create these worlds are just phenomenal. They do such a good job. So, look, I think we could talk all day.
We could.
And all night about RPGs. And I'm not sure we're going to come to any kind of conclusion other than there's many and they're brilliant, right?
I'm already sitting in the dark, so I'm not sure.
We had this conversation and I said, switch your lights on now.
And I know we are pretty much ending, but I want to throw a real random curveball in and hear me out on this one. Is the ultimate of all RPG games Football Manager? Because you are taking on that really specific role. So
you've definitely stumped me with this one.
But you see what I'm saying? I know it's a sports game and it's a management game, but could there be an argument for Football Manager being a An RPG.
I,
The ultimate.
I mean, look, if Animal Crossing can be an RPG, I'm pretty sure Football Manager can slip in there somewhere. I guess you're right. You're still managing stats. In fact, you're managing more stats, I guess, than any other RPG game you could probably mention.
Well, it's the one game where you are specific. You are that role. You have to be the football manager, and
Yeah.
you've got to be laser focused on that. So yeah.
Well, look, I mean, it's a bombshell I didn't see coming, to be honest, for this episode, that the conclusion we come to is the ultimate RPG is Football Manager. I'm slightly concerned now.
You're very welcome.
There might not be an episode 5 from here on in. I'll let you have your weirdisms, Dan. It's fine. Yeah, Football Manager's an RPG. It's in the bag. Good. All right. Look, we've been whittling on quite a while, so let's wrap up as usual with what you're looking forward to in the next couple of weeks, Dan.
Do you know what? It's not in the next couple of weeks. I remembered this is coming out, and I haven't got a clue when it is, but I'm really looking forward to the new Mafia game. Mafia, the
yes.
old
I
country.
haven't played the others, so you and I know you have, right? So you're going to have to give me a bit of insight on our walk tomorrow and talk me through them.
It's a random one, and like I said, it's some way out.
I think it's this year, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's actually in the next couple of months. So I'll have a look at that for our next episode.
I'm sure it's in the next few months. What are we in now? June nearly, right?
Yeah, yeah. So, and I'm also looking forward to people getting hold of us at gamingviewspodcast@gmail.com or Gaming Views across all social media.
Very, very exciting. That was a smooth plug. I also am looking forward to that game of people doing that. But for me, I suspect in the next couple of weeks, obviously on the 5th, we got the launch of the Switch 2. So I'll be heavily invested in some Donkey Kong and some Mario Kart World but it did strike me with fear when I very quickly remembered that there are 4 of us who's going to want to play this. So I'm now going to invest a load more money in some extra controllers, yada, yada. So yeah, I'm expecting me to be not going out because I'm so poor, because I've spent all the money on additional hardware to play a Switch 2. So I'm looking forward to that. And then I'm going to try and do the double and get the DLC of Dredge done. Finish that off as well.
There you go.
I'm gonna get some more of the Expedition 33 out of the way. I think because I do that and finish up as a challenge and finish up Doom Dark Ages. So they're all in the bag at the moment. But I think there's a couple that are coming in the next month that are going to be that I'm looking forward to. So I've already pre-downloaded The Alters, which looks fascinating. Which is kind of like, did you see the film Moon?
No.
About the guy who lives on the moon and is constantly cloning. It's a Doug Jones film. It's brilliant sci-fi, like intelligent sci-fi. About a guy and it's his clone keeps being respawned. And this is kind of a similar thing. It's like, you have all these alters who could have lived different timelines but doing different jobs in the same space. So it's, they're differently skilled. One could have been a scientist. So that looks fascinating. And then there's the one from the ex-guy, the guy who used to work for Rockstar and help build GTA. It's called Mind's Eye. So originally it was supposed to be it was supposed to be part of their gaming ecosystem. They wanted to create like a next gen version of Roblox type thing. But they pared it back and decided to launch this standalone that was built within the engine called Mind's Eye that looks quite, it could be a load of old junk, but looking forward to that. And then FBC Firebreak. I'm looking forward to that as well. And I'm not a big multiplayer gamer, so quite looking forward to that. I think that's us.
I think that is.
I enjoyed that. I enjoyed getting the RPG thing off my chest and done.
Look out for more deep dives into everything we've mentioned coming in.
Yeah, every game we've mentioned we'll do at some point.
Yeah.
Look, Dan, it was a pleasure as always. A big thank you to our listeners and followers. And as Dan said, subscribe, like, do all the things you do on social media for the podcast, and catch us at Gaming Views. Dan?
Bye.